Hey, welcome to another computer literacy broadcast. We're going to play with some more graphic stuff today. Let's take a look. So this week we're going to move on to layers, which I mentioned a little bit last week. We've already played with selections a bit, so we'll look at that again, and switching from selections to masks and why masks might be a better tool than selections. The idea of a clone stamp, colors, which we looked at a little bit last week, fair use, which we're going to review again. We've seen that a couple of times now, so a little more detail here. And then there's a tutorial submission that you'll do. The previous tutorials here on layers, selections, clone stamp, and color and fair use have information that you're going to need in order to do this tutorial here. So you got to go through these first in order to do the tutorial. And you might, while you're working on the tutorial, go back and look at these. And then the editing project, again, is going to give you a little more freedom in your project, whereas here it's prescripted what you're going to do in terms of the image you start with and what you're going to do with the image based on the previous tutorials. In the project, it's a little more free-form, where you're going to design yourself a postcard in Pixlr with different layers and different effects. And then you're going to make a few different sizes of that postcard. And for pretty much everything we're going to do here, there's a video tutorial to go with it. So under layers, one of our starting places, we're going to take that image that's going to be used in the tutorial. So we're warming up for the tutorial here. So the work that you do on this page will be used in that tutorial submission. And then I have a video that goes through it too. So on every page, there's a brief tutorial. Some of us here at BMCC wrote up, and then there's links out to some other tutorials that are written in some cases in videos in others. And so please check out each of these links as you go through. After the layers tutorial, you're going to take a look at selections and masks. And we have the three selection tools defined here: the marquee tool, the lasso tool, and the magic wand. And there are some tutorial pages on using each of those here with videos. Some examples of tutorial which you may have seen before when I did my how-to on how to make an image transparent in the background. And there's an excellent video here about using selections, and down here about using masks in Pixlr. So definitely check out this video right here. And masks are basically selections that you can save, and I'll show that in just a moment. Followed by that is the clone stamp tool, which is a remarkable tool in any video, in any image editing program. And there's a video here that goes through some examples of using it. And then down below here, I show how you can use the clone stamp to use the sky as paint, to paint out the lines in the telephone pole. Or down below, we can use the grass as paint and paint out the telephone pole down below. So the clone tool allows us to do a couple of things. One thing, it allows us to use pieces of the image as paint. So instead of picking a color of green, you can say, hey, this grass is my paint. I'm going to paint with grass, which is pretty remarkable. And you can also use it to reproduce or clone objects. And the video up above here, somewhere, goes over that. Next, a bit on color. So I talked a bit last time about the idea of a hexadecimal color. Here's a red, green, blue RGB version in hexadecimal. Here's a similar version of the same color, but in a decimal version of that color, indicating the intensity of red, intensity of green, intensity of blue. So in hexadecimal, 38 is the same as 38 in decimal. AC, intensity of green here, is the same as 172 as a decimal number. And EC in hexadecimal is 252 in decimal notation. You don't need to know how to convert from hexadecimal to decimal, but often when you're playing around with colors in images or colors on the web, you need to use hexadecimal references for those colors, because there's, on most computers, 17 million colors roughly, and most of them don't have a name like butterfly blue. We have to use a hexadecimal color to reference them. And so there's tutorials on color replacement in Pixlr and using the color selection tool in Pixlr. And then there's that fun what the hex game that you can play if you haven't already. Guess the color by looking at the intensity of red, green, and blue. So this one looks like it's in the middle of each for red, green, and blue. So I'm going to guess it's that one right there. Ooh, I got it right. Otherwise, for that other one, the green would have had to be bigger. RGB, red, green, blue. So I can do it again. All right, so let's see. A little bit of red, a lot of green, and a lot of blue. So it's probably this one here. Nice. So again, hexadecimal is base 16. We only have 10 digits, so the extra digits, 9 followed 10 would be A, 11 would be B, 12 is C, 13 is D, 14 is E, and 15 is F. And so F is like a lot of hexadecimal for the second digit. E also, that's pretty up there too. That's a 14 and a 15 in hexadecimal. So if there's letters in the second digit, that means it's more intense for that particular color. So play around with that. There were also videos way back in the course about hexadecimal. Oh, last week. Huh, way back. Interesting. All right. Fair use. So more stuff on fair use. Some of the stuff you may have read earlier. I had links to some of this stuff in the beginning of the course. Here we're more applying it to images than just general information. And so here's some screenshots from Flickr and Creative Commons about different types of licenses. And so you need to explore this page and the links there just to learn a little bit more about fair use with images and alternative licenses to either public domain or copyright, which are the in-between ones from Creative Commons. And then a little quiz on that reading back there. All right, so you're going to take two images here, the house image and the for sale sign, and you're going to blend them into a new image. And there's tutorials on that in the previous pages I was just looking at there. So you're going to have more than enough to work on that. In the next assignment, let's see, don't forget to check out rubrics, see what you're getting graded on. It's a little more free form, you're going to create a postcard that has a 4:6 aspect ratio. So 1800 by 1200 has the same ratio as 6:4. So if you take 6 and divide it by 4, you're going to get, what's that, 1.5. If you take 1800 and divide by 1200, you get 1.5. If you take 1200 divided by 800, you get 1.5. So these all have the same ratio when you divide them. That means they're all the same shape. So in this one, I'd recommend starting with something bigger than 1800 by 1200, and then you'll scale it down into PNG versions in each of these sizes. And there's a video tutorial here that goes over that. So I'm just going to play with a couple of things in a moment with the image stuff. Before that, let's take a look at the research. The research this week is on privacy and security in our computer type society. So there's links to different readings about privacy and security here. So check out some of these. I just added these, an article from Mozilla about internet privacy and security that's quite good. It links to a lot of other good stuff. And another one from Wired magazine that had links out to a lot of other good articles on privacy and security. So how do you keep your stuff safe, and how can you have some bit of privacy in this place where the internet is everywhere? So anything that gets posted on the internet, any app that you use that transfers images or text, once it leaves your phone or your computer, it's out there and potentially available to the rest of the world. And so how do you deal with that? And should you worry about it or not? And some people do and some people don't. So there's some stuff to think about here. So what you're going to do is you're going to find a recent news article, recent within the last 2 months from today, and you're going to write about it. So read the article, make sure it's accessible to you, that you learn a little something from it also, and then you'll write a paragraph of summary and a paragraph of opinion. All of that's going to go in a WordPress post, and then you'll reply here to put a link to your WordPress post so other people can check it out. The rest of us will then read some of these posts that others make, and then we'll make a comment on that WordPress post in WordPress. So this page right here, the discussions page, is only for us to post links to the article reviews that we write, and then we'll comment in WordPress. And yeah, that's that. All right, so when I'm not playing on a computer, I like to ride my bike whenever I can, and there's these great new mountain bike trails in Pendleton. And I found this map of them. And the cool thing about the map is if you point to one of the trails names over here, it highlights it in the picture. Or if you point to a trail here, it highlights it and lets you know which trail it is, which is pretty cool. Now, suppose I wanted to send this image to somebody. I wanted to use it in a flyer for the bike trails. The problem with this image right now is that I can't tell the difference between the trails once I get it into my flyer. So I take a screenshot of this, and then I get something like this. And I no longer have that interactive web stuff going on where I can click on a trail, because this is just a snapshot of it, as opposed to the live interactive thing I had there. So I'm just going to do a little bit to edit this here. The clone stamp tool first. Let's take a look at that. The clone stamp tool allows me to clone something. So I got a lot of empty space over here I don't really need. I have a lot of empty space over here I don't really need. So I'm just going to play around by shrinking this image a little bit and getting stuff I don't need out. So for example, I'm going to take this ruler here that says this is 1,000 feet from this edge to that edge, and I'm just going to move it over here. And so to do that, what I'm going to do is control click over here to make a sample of that area as my paintbrush. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to reproduce it. And to do that, all I have to do is click, and notice that as I do that, it draws out from the selection where I started. See the two parts moving together there? So I can reproduce that over here. And I can put it anywhere I want. So I can put it anywhere else on the screen I want. I really didn't want it up there, so I'm going to get rid of that by just going to my undo history and getting rid of it. So I was able to clone that out. So now I can crop out some of this image because I don't need that left part of it. So then I can switch over to the cropping tool, and I can draw a rectangle around what I want to keep. And I want to keep all of this stuff here. And enter. Okay. So I shrunk it a little bit by removing some of that stuff on that side. Now I could do a similar thing by cloning this over here and moving it in a bit. And so I can get rid of it. So get my clone stamp back. And let's get a bigger brush. We can go 200 pixels. Oh yeah, that'll work. So you have to choose a brush that's appropriate. This brush is a little bit frightening, but I'm going to click over here. And then I'm going to try and repaint that. Let's say, actually, let's click on this side right there. Put you right about here, maybe. And so I can reproduce it. There. So you can use a clone stamp to clone things, which is kind of cool. Other things you can do with the clone stamp is you can paint stuff out by using things on the screen. So let's get a smaller brush to demo that. And let's take it down to 15 and fuzzy maybe. That's a little too small. 20, 25. Yeah, let's do 25. So I picked a 25 brush. So for example, let's suppose I didn't want to see this airport road up there. So I could use the background to paint it out. So I might want to zoom in to do that and move over. So I could take this background color right here, control click to grab it, and then I can just kind of dab this out. And if I just click, 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 like dabbing a brush, that's always going to select from the same spot on the screen. If I click and drag, my selection follows me along. Okay, so you can use the clone stamp to paint something out, or you can use the clone stamp to paint something in that was in a different place on the image, which is pretty remarkable. So I can crop this down again, and only use this part of it. And let's make sure I got the whole top and the whole bottom. All right, that should be good. All right, so we've done crop before. Next thing I want to show quick is the idea of a selection. So we've looked at selections before. We've got this magic wand tool that can select things, and it has a tolerance that we can use. Now, the problem here is that all the other trails appear blue except for James Trail and the Tower Trail coming down there. And that makes this key on the side kind of useless in this version of the image. Let's make this a little bigger and then zoom in a little more. If I try to select with the magic wand the green, it's a little disconnected, and so the computer's going to have a hard time doing that. Now I could change the tolerance, but because the blue is a dotted line, I'm probably never going to be able to do that. And so I could spend all day using Control to subtract things off, and Shift to add things to the selection, and I might never get quite the right selection. And that's where masks come in. So when I use masks, I usually make a duplicate layer for the mask. So first thing I'm going to do is click the duplicate layer. I thought that was here. Oh, it must be up here. Layers, duplicate layer. So I just made a copy of it. So I have this background that's locked, and I have this duplicate sitting on top of it. So just to note that's the case, if I were to take a paintbrush right now and start painting on this, let's see what happened. Probably selection issue. Edit, deselect all. There we go. Okay, so it looks like I just damaged my image, and sort of. I painted on this copy that I made. So if I turn off the copy from being visible, you can see the original background is untouched because I was actively in the upper layer. So I should probably give that a better name. So let's call it upper layer right now. All right, and let's put it back in. And then let's undo that paintbrush. So what I'm going to do is I want to make a layer mask here. So it's one of these buttons down here, I think. There it is, add layer mask. And what that does is it puts basically a transparent film over it. And so then I can select part of the image to do something different with without affecting the rest of it. So it's like a selection, but it's adjustable. So let's see. Let's go with a 20. Yeah, I think I like that one. So what I want to do is I just want to select James Trail here, for example. And so I'm going to paint over it with black, which appears green on the screen right now. And the nice thing about this is I can go back and forth in the selection between painting on it and erasing what I just painted. So what did I do? Let's unlock the back layer to see. So if I turn off the back layer, you can see that the mask put a layer of transparency over the copy of the image that was visible a minute ago. And by painting in black on the mask, I'm then making visible some of that second layer. And can you see I got some of the blue stuff here. So then I am going to get my eraser here, and I can just kind of clean up on the edge. Oops, I'm on the wrong layer. Did it do anything? Maybe. Let's go back. That's another thing you got to be careful of. Which layer you're working in. So I can clean up where that blue is. I don't want that. And you'll often have to switch brush sizes to make this happen, right? And maybe you need even to zoom in more to make this happen. So a layer is a reusable selection is what you can think of it as. And as I switch back and forth between the paintbrush tool to make something visible and the eraser tool to make it invisible. Maybe I want to see the word James Trail too. And I got more of that blue accidentally down here. Let's change the eraser size to a hard 20. So I'm just clicking on it here to erase in little pieces. All right, so let's suppose I like my selection now. So then what I can do is apply some kind of effect to it. So for example, I might want to adjust the color balance. And I want to offset the red and green so I can make part of it stand out a little bit different. And so now if I make the underlayer visible again, now James Trail stands out. And so I could do that for each of these by making a mask for them. So suppose I wanted to edit that trail there, I would just add another. So go back to layer 0, my original, make a copy of it, and then turn that copy into a mask. So I would give it a better name, like right side trail, or maybe that's Evans Trail, whatever it's called. And then add a mask to it. So if I turn off the bottom layer, we can see that's visible in that layer. Turn off that one, it looks like this is invisible, but it's really hiding a version of this right here. And then I could go in here and work on this trail. And so now I'm in a different layer. So if I want to see what I just exposed, and again, this is why I make a duplicate layer all the time. Let's see, turn that off, and I can see what part of the exposed trail I just did right there. So 2 versions of it helps. One background version that remains untouched. And again, I'm not editing actually the image in this layer. I just have a mask sitting on top of it, and it's the mask. It's kind of like using masking tape in your house when you're painting. I'm adding tape and removing tape. So basically I taped off everything. Now I'm removing some tape to expose some of the under stuff. And I can turn off the bottom layer to see what I've exposed. And then I can use the eraser if I want to adjust any of it. And then I can do whatever I want to this. So again, I could go back to adjustments, and maybe I want to play with the hue and saturation. So hue will change the color. And so now I can bring that back in. There we go. So by making different masks, I can have different effects on each part, but each one would have to be its own layer with a mask. Masks are super powerful once you get the hang of them. All right, I think that's good for now. I've demonstrated some of the things you're going to play with. There's lots of videos already out there for everything you need, and they're all located inside of these tutorial pages. Down, come on. Here. So have fun, stay in touch, do good computer stuff. I'll catch you later.